Hey, welcome to Punks for Progress. I'm Reverend Aaron. I am here with our comrade Ted Kelly from Philadelphia for another installment of the Philly Report. We did a video a while back. Please check it out. It's called Philly Direct Action Against Fascism and in Support of Refugees with our comrade Ted Kelly. It also has Pinko the Bear in it, which is always fun. But Ted, welcome to Punks for Progress.
Thank you so much for having me again, Rev.
Oh, this is fantastic. We are going to cover...
Always a pleasure. I feel like we build the golden bridge across all political tendencies.
Absolutely. Oh, and it's just... well, shit. Okay, so this is how we build this bridge. We're going to talk about developments with the Move 9 family. Some developments with Mumia recently. We're going to talk about a refinery explosion in Philly. Ongoing... efforts and organization and issues in relation to the prison system that you got going down there, which is an awful thing because it's the prison system in America. We're going to talk about various hands-off actions that you and your comrades are working on, Venezuela, Iran, all the other 612,000 fucking places of imperialist America is taking a big violent shit on right now. We're going to be talking about F.I.R.E, which is freedom for migrants and refugees everywhere.
That's right. For refugees everywhere.
And no Punks for Progress report, at least, would be complete without some serious fucking bagging on Proud Boys. And because they have earned it. And they're doing some real disgusting-ass next-level shit up your way, too, right, Ted?
It's alarming. It really is, where the Proud Boys are at.
I mean, like, concerted efforts with going to people's homes and shit, you know?
Yeah. Guns. Like, they're taking out the guns now. It's really spooky.
So we're going to be talking about that. But, of course, that's the porn, so we'll save it for last.
Exactly.
So... talk to me about... Now, first of all, we're going to talk about the Move 9. Maybe you could get us a little bit up to speed for a really kind of a more in-depth look at it. Check out that Philly Direct Action Against Fascism video. There's a fairly lengthy clip in there that kind of explains really the history of what this state did to these people and bombing them and imprisoning them. And but there's new developments, and I'm going to go ahead and let you kind of take it from there, Cal.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was also a very good, on the podcast Millennials Are Killing Capitalism, they did a 3-hour episode all about the history of MOVE, so I recommend people check that out. But for people that don't know, briefly, the MOVE organization is a revolutionary black nationalist, black radical group in Philadelphia that formed sort of in the aftermath of the destruction of the Black Panther Party in Philadelphia. Philadelphia had a pretty active and very powerful Black Panther chapter that Mumia Abu Jamal briefly was a member of. But under the reign of police commissioner and then later Mayor Frank Rizzo, the Philadelphia chapter was completely destroyed. In this organization called MOVE, which is not an acronym, it came out of, a movement, and they went with the name MOVE. And, in the mid to late 70s, this was a black nationalist group that was vegan, it was environmentalist, they had community gardens, they would compost, all the stuff that way ahead of their time in terms of the broader political movement. A lot of stuff that's been co-opted by white liberalism now. They were doing it 40, 50 years ago. And there were systematic attacks by the state and by the racist reactionary Philadelphia city and police to destroy this organization. In 1978, there was an attack, a police attack on the MOVE house where they were all living in Powelton Village in West Philly. And in this melee where the police fired literally tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition into the house where there were children and people. And in this fracas, a cop got hit by friendly fire
Of
and
course.
they charged 9 members of the MOVE organization, all with firing the same bullet, and said that they killed this cop, which they didn't even have guns in the house, you know. As soon as they were arrested, they bulldozed the house the same day or the day after to destroy evidence that they didn't even have weapons that were functional in the house. And the judge, Edward Malmed, sentenced them each to 30 to 100 years in prison.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
For one
So
pig. One pig that... Did the pig die even? I mean...
Yeah, he did die, but he was shot in the back from a bullet, and he was facing the house.
Jesus
and
Christ.
The cop shooting like a frenzy of bullets into the house. And everybody, like even like the MOVE 9 members, the 9 of them that were sentenced, even the parole officers and the prison guards, they all knew that they didn't do it. As Eddie said in his press conference earlier last week, they all knew we didn't do it, but somebody had to pay because a cop got killed, and they decided that it was us. So that was in '78. A few years later, Mumia Abu Jamal, who was the only journalist in Philadelphia who was giving them a fair, objective take, he would just publish what they said and publish what the police said. And even that was too radical. He was shot by police, and then they framed him for the murder of a police officer. And then a few years after that, the city of Philadelphia dropped a bomb on their house on Osage Avenue. And
I want to clarify, that's not a metaphorical bomb.
Yeah, right. They were given, I think it was C4 explosives, some kind of thing like that, from the FBI, and they collaborated with the state police. They flew a helicopter over the house. Again, this is in a residential neighborhood in West Philly. Dropped a bomb on the house, and the inferno that resulted killed 11 people in the MOVE house, 5 of whom were children, and burned down a city block, leaving hundreds of people. I mean, it was an airstrike that left refugees in the city. And to this day, those houses have been condemned multiple times, the ones they rebuilt, because they keep, just building these cheap houses. There have never really been reparations for the MOVE bombing. Among the people killed in that 1985 bombing was John Africa, the coordinator, who was the founder of the MOVE organization. There were 2 survivors, Ramona Africa, who served, I think, 7 years in prison afterwards for the crime of surviving. She still, to this day, has burns on her body that you can see from surviving that attack. And Birdie Africa, who was a child, who escaped as well. So that was 85, and now 40 years after the initial arrest of the MOVE 9, this is a trend that's happening all over the world, or all over the country now. Herman Bell, the people involved in the Brinks heist, they're old Black Panthers who, after so many years, are starting to get up for parole, and are, as soon as their case is being heard, they're getting released because they were all framed. And now, of the MOVE 9, Michael Sr., Debbie, Janet, Janine, and Eddie have all been released. Again, they all served 40, going on 41 years in prison. Merle and Phil Africa, unfortunately, were killed in prison in circumstances even the prisons acknowledge were suspicious. But we've reached this point now where the remaining 2 MOVE members, Chuck and Delbert, are up for parole. Delbert was actually denied parole, and they were going to make him wait until 2022. But there was a mass mobilization, and now he's having another hearing in September. And it seems more possible than ever, likely, that all the surviving MOVE 9 members are going to walk free. It's very exciting. And especially to see the reunion of this family. Michael and Debbie is a very interesting story. Debbie was pregnant with her son in '78 when she was arrested. She gave birth in her prison cell, and she held by herself. And she was able to hide her son, Michael Jr., for 3 days until the prison authorities realized what was happening, and then tore him away from her. And now, 40 years later, some of us were very lucky to attend Michael and Debbie's wedding where they have now, after 40 years, were released, saw each other for the first time, and their love has not diminished. They're now married and living with Michael, their son. It was a beautiful thing. I think Mike Jr. said when his mom was first released, she was the first of the Move 9 to get out, that he had never seen his mom's feet before because they had only seen each other in a prison waiting room. And that small, meaningless thing, I think, is enough to really hit what is stolen from people who are put in prison for this long, you know. I think we last talked when we had just come back from our trip to Mexico to visit one of the camps in Tijuana. And I think one of the few joyous moments of that trip, aside from meeting with activists down there, was getting sent a video of Mike and Debbie dancing in their kitchen. Beautiful. Beautiful.
I have seen that video, and it picture 1,000 words, whatever, man. It just,
yeah.
The list of things that we take for granted in our daily lives is just endless. It's just phone calls.
And yet
phone calls. Jesus Christ, that's a fortune. That's a house. You know? You could lose a house. The price of phone calls is a house, man. Especially 40 years.
Very hell. You know, yeah.
I mean, that's just one, but like, so that is fantastic news and genuinely a reason to be hopeful, and you know, send all power out to the entire Africa family and all of the Move 9.
It's a beautiful.
So there have been positive and even maybe some kind of less than positive developments in Mumia that maybe you could get us up to case with, because there's been developments in his case, but his physical well-being is he's experiencing some troubles. So
yes, and I think that's at this point. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who watch your show are familiar with Mumia's case. He has been an internationally known political prisoner for decades now. He was a journalist. I often think, actually, that, I mean, our support for Assange and Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden, extremely important. And Mumia should be considered another one of those journalists who, for political reasons, was framed up and attacked and imprisoned, very much like Assange. And I think one of the things that we have to really, really remember is that these prisons are poisonous, toxic dungeons. And the fact that the Move 9 members can come out and, you know, Mike and Debbie look like they're teenagers. It's incredible. But that is the exception, not the norm. And after decades of imprisonment, Mumia, he contracted Hep C when he was in prison. He is now given treatment for Hep C, but he has cirrhosis of the liver. And he has a skin condition that's not being treated. Almost certainly, if not a direct attack on his health, is a result of the conditions of the prison. And the most really dire and scary news is that at the current point, Mumia is effectively blind.
Walking in the dark. For years, it has been difficult for me to write or speak about myself. Other people's stories seemed more interesting, until now. Several weeks ago, as I was walking along the main path leading from the chow hall, I noticed that I could no longer see a single face despite the river of men passing by. It was then that I recognized how bad my eyesight had become. I said nothing to no one, not my lawyers, not my wife, Wadia. I didn't tell my supporters, nor even my personal physician, a New York internist, Dr. Joseph Harris. For one thing, what could they do? For another, prisoners are extremely wary of telling other prisoners about their disabilities. One doesn't want to seem weak among such men. Every time I used an eye drop with steroids, my vision turned milky, as if someone pulled a white shade down over both eyes. I realized, to my horror, that I was functionally blind, for I couldn't read a paper or a book or even faces. When I went to an eye doctor for tests, a guard who accompanied me said, "Damn, Jamal, you're blind as a bat." He said this because the test showed I couldn't see anything, letters or fingers. That milkiness has since dissipated as I've stopped using the drops. Yet my vision has become so poor that I've used voices to recognize people, as a blind man does. My vision remains more than poor. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.
He has severe glaucoma and cataracts. He was given eye drops at one point that seemed to exacerbate his condition, which is very suspicious. But the man is in his 60s. He was born in 1954. He has severe health problems. He is innocent of the crime that he was convicted of, and it's time to just let him out. He's no longer on death row. That was a battle that was fought and won by the people to take him off of death row. And as someone who is no longer slated for execution by the state, he's eligible for parole. And as Michael Africa Jr. always says, the system is based on pressure. When developments in his case came about, involving documents and evidence that was withheld during his initial appeals and his initial conviction, unfortunately, our so-called progressive liberal reformer DA, Larry Krasner, blocked every effort for Mumia to have that evidence presented and released, and to finally be given fair hearing.
No, and let's be clear, because the reason the mechanisms of power would want to keep his story quiet is because it cuts to the fucking root of American imperialism. And it will lay bare just what a lie our whole fucking, this whole country is. And what they did to Mumia, it is happening to people on the regular.
Exactly.
And he's not an rare exception. It's just people have, like yourselves and your comrades and other people, other socialists and anarchists and people, have kept the name of Mumia alive.
Correct.
And that's why we can even know that.
Part of the reason that Mumia represents so many other people who you rightly say, there's 2.2 million people in the U.S. prison system right now. Our concept of criminality, that anyone deserves to rot in a dungeon, is completely fucked. And you're right, Mumia's case is the most flagrant. It's the most, in some ways, complicated. It rises great passions because there is a dead cop involved. But every time we fight for Mumia, there's a reason that when we say free Mumia, we say free them all. Because, just for example, when we were fighting for his Hep C treatment, it went to the Supreme Court, and now every prisoner in Pennsylvania gets Hep C treatment. This is now a national thing. Right. So he is the voice of the voiceless. He's the symbol for all prison abolition. But there's no reason that we at no point is it limited to Mumia. It's always a fight to free them all. And so there was this surreal moment at the end of last year where after the judge ruled in favor of Mumia, granting him a new appeal, it's interesting. Judges, like any other officials in this system, are by definition charged with stopping and repressing radical action. But this Judge Leon Tucker, who's a black judge who's been elected a couple times in Philly, wrote this very interesting brief about how Mumia's case represents justice for all prisoners, and how just because, his profile doesn't mean that we shouldn't honestly consider his appeal. And just after this ruling, Larry Krasner claims that he was walking around the basement of the DA's office and happened across a room filled with hundreds of boxes of evidence, dozens of which were marked Mumia.
Just happened. Huh!
He was looking for office furniture.
Yeah, all of a sudden, all of this was here. All of a sudden, for
the day
decades.
After this judge's... Right. Krasner still was adamant about blocking Mumia's case for appeal. He challenged the judge's decision, which was going to throw us into years of more court work and the drudgery and waiting that is involved there. But the people came out. They protested at the DA's office. There were petitions circulated internationally, and Krasner changed his mind. The system works on pressure. So Mumia's case is going to either the state Supreme Court or the Superior Court. We'll know at some point this summer for a potential appeal. But our demand now, as it has always been, is that Mumia needs to be freed, released now. We can go through all the court shit, whatever, but the man has been in prison for almost 40 years. He is ill. He should be granted relief. And, if they want to put him up on the witness stand, all the better as a free man so that the world can hear his voice for real.
Absolutely. So, is there a way people can sort of stay up to speed with what's going on with Mumia?
Absolutely. And in fact, the day that we're talking is the anniversary of his initial sentencing. July 4th is always a big day of action in Philadelphia and formally around the world for solidarity with Mumia and political prisoners. Today, it's late now, but today there was a calling campaign, but I'll make sure that everyone has the link so that we can still keep calling the courts and demanding Mumia's immediate release. But I would recommend that people check out the Facebook page Mobilization for Mumia, with the number 4, to stay abreast of all the updates. And we also do, like, whenever we have a press conference or anything, we live stream it so people can get those alerts as well.
Excellent. So, Mobilization, the number 4, Mumia?
For Mumia, yep.
Excellent. Well, since we're on the issue of prisons, you had some things you wanted to talk about in relation to prison work.
Totally. Pennsylvania is a weird case when it comes to prisons in the U.S. I don't know if folks are familiar with the Eastern State Penitentiary, which is right here in Philly. It's an old prison that was decommissioned at some point. Now it's like a museum. I actually live a couple blocks away. One of my great-great-grandfather was in there for a while and for labor activity. But Pennsylvania has always been sort of on the vanguard of these like penology and tinkering with prisons and how to better keep people penned in. So the penitentiary was some Quaker project which basically invented solitary confinement. It was everyone is held in individual cells so that they can be penitent and pray and think about their crimes. It's super creepy shit. And to this day, I mean, that was 150 plus years ago. To this day, Pennsylvania experiments with all these horrible, oppressive prison measures. And the most recent one is this lockdown policy, which is a policy statewide now, where basically at the drop of the hat, prison authorities can lock down entire wings, entire blocks of the prison for 36 hours with no due process, no reason given. It's just a way of basically putting everyone in solitary. They don't get showers, they don't have access to the prison library, all this stuff.
And let's say, and if you had, if that's your visiting day, you're not getting your fucking visit.
Okay.
You're not,
no phone calls.
Yeah, I was gonna say you might have you were planning a phone call with your partner because they had spoken to your lawyer and you needed to get that information, and now you're not gonna get that fucking information because
Exactly.
Why? We want to see if we can get away with just mass oppressing people even more than they're already oppressed. Right. It's fucking gross, man.
There's a great prison activist named Bryant Arroyo who's at SCI Frackville. who has done. Mumia refers to him as the world's first jailhouse environmentalist. He is on the vanguard of these fights against toxic conditions in prison. In fact, if you've heard about the federal prison they were going to build in Kentucky next to an active coal mine, Brian helped lead the struggle. Yeah, right, exactly. It's like there are cancer clusters all over, and this is where they tend to build these prisons because nobody wants them in their backyard, so to speak.
Right.
So that got shut down. That was state prisoners in Pennsylvania and elsewhere organizing on behalf of federal prisoners so they wouldn't be put in a fucking dungeon next to a coal mine, you know? So Brian has been on the vanguard of that. But he said regarding this prison policy, like, imagine you're driving down the highway and you get pulled over by a state trooper and they don't ask for your license or registration. They arrest you. They don't tell you why. They put you in a holding cell and they say, we'll let you out in 36 hours. And then 36 hours later, they tell you, oh yeah, there was a drunk driver down the road. We were just arresting everybody. It's absurd. They're calling it a violence reduction policy. It's a strategy that was used in West Pennsylvania to break up gang activity, and now it's being used on the general population.
I was going to say, it sounds like something that would have its roots in like stop and frisk, which, the narrative from the struggle and from the fucking people in the height of the sort of stop and frisk stuff was that this is just a proving ground, people. This is just a testing ground. We're the easy targets. If they can get away with doing this to us, they're going to turn around and do it to you. And so mass sweeps of people because of a drunk driver,
right,
while we're putting kids in cages at the border, this is all proving ground shit, man.
Yeah. And now if there's a scuffle at the chow hall and you're in your cell, you get locked down for 36 hours too, even if you're in a totally different wing of the prison. It's absurd. And also, the most important thing to keep in mind is these arbitrary, capricious lockdowns tend to always occur when there's a prison strike scheduled. The last one was June 1st. Last year, there was an entire statewide lockdown when Pennsylvania prisoners were going to participate in the national prison strike. The reason that they gave for the lockdown last year was that there were drugs being smuggled into the prisons. We know who's smuggling the drugs into the prison.
Right,
it's the guards.
The guards,
of course.
And
that's everybody's side hustle.
And again, it's such a great, useful talking point for them. And because, look, there is all kinds of fucking righteous action going on with organizing within the prisoners. You got IWalk and all kinds of other groups that are prisoners organizing prisoners with solidarity from people on the outside. And the only way to do that effectively is to get word out through your networks within the prison. Second, the guards get wind of that, Philly can say, all right, Texas and Kentucky and California and Nevada, what we did is we implemented this 36-hour fucking random thing, violence reduction. We heard you got drugs coming in your prison. You might want to put down a 36-hour lock. Don't mention that there's maybe another Million for Prisoners march in the works or something like that going on coincidentally at the same time. Wow. And so
it stops their communication with the outside, it stops their communication with each other, and if bosses out here could put us all in our bedrooms when we were planning strike actions, they would do that too. And as always, prisons are a test case, and Pennsylvania is ground zero for that. Pennsylvania also has the most juvenile lifers, which is children who are sentenced to life in prison, than any other legal jurisdiction in the world. So this is being implemented on a massive scale, where even kids are getting locked up. The atrocities that are being committed on the border and all these ICE detention facilities are a continuation of the Trail of Tears and the war that's always been waged against indigenous people. And prisons also are concentration camps for the poor. The way these facilities are being operated is really no different than the concentration camps being operated by ICE, or indeed the camps that were being operated during the Indian removal policy or plantations during slavery.
And I'll say again, which if you've been watching our channel for any time, you've heard me say it before, but there's a reason that we say amend the 13th, abolish slavery, because
Right.
when the 13th Amendment was put into place, with the exception clause of slavery is abolished in the United States unless you have been duly convicted of a crime, which basically meant, especially in the South, the formation of the police in the South was just the slave patrols, that the people who had been slave patrollers prior to the ratification of the 13th Amendment then just became police. So that,
Exactly.
and then they put in all kinds of laws about you could be for loitering or for spitting on the street or for jaywalking or, like I always say, looking at a white woman wrong.
Right.
And
right.
then now you return to your prison, but what they then did was farmed you out to the plantation that you had just been supposedly freed from. And so
And mine.
this
into
is
all kinds of.
and so I would just say what we're seeing and what you're describing to me just sounds like a very, very, they've had over 100 years to fine tune the sophisticated way with which they run this mechanism of slavery. And it's no secret that since since the Trump and the administration has come in and we see this global rise in right-wing fascism with, Bolsonaro and Viktor Orban and Duterte and all these, far right, and the fascist parties that are like getting seats in parliament in Europe, in parliaments in Europe and stuff.
Golden Dawn in Greece and even in France, we see, with Marine Le Pen and all these people, yeah.
Absolutely. So the capitalists feel empowered. They feel emboldened.
Right.
And
Yes.
they're really in earnest across the board in every element, every facet you can think of, whether it's the just a horrendous attack on women's rights and their bodily fucking autonomy. And
Exactly.
and it of course it ties into, again, what's happening with these children at the border and the separation of families, with this proving ground fucking disgustingness that's happening in the Philly, in the prison systems that you're describing.
Right.
I mean, Alex Jones, one of his side things was Prison Planet, right? And it was always about the FEMA camps, and it was all about, one of the things that the capitalists do and that fascists do is they appropriate the talking points against them and then spew them back onto their detractors. Okay?
Precisely.
So
I think about the term, the name Prison Planet all the time, too, because for decades before Alex Jones was anything more than a local weirdo, Mumia Abu-Jamal had been signing off his prison radio addresses with "From a Prison Nation." And it's like, good God, they're even gentrifying Mumia's words. They're taking that and trying to use it as this conspiracy theory shit.
absolutely. And so when they say, they push this ridiculous Pizzagate or they push the FEMA camp stuff, so that when you come to them and say, hey, this Jeffries guy has an airplane where he's actually pimping out children to really rich people, well, if you get focused on that, you start sounding like Alex Jones in Pizzagate. If you start talking about, look,
it's a
man,
built-in defense.
that's right.
Exactly.
If you start talking about, hey, man, they're going to start locking up random innocent people and putting them in concentration camps. Oh, yeah, I heard Alex Jones go off on that for years with the FEMA camps, whatever, and it's disgustingly brilliant.
Yeah, it's crude, but it works. It sucks in a lot of people who otherwise would be on our side. I was canvassing for doing union organizing last summer, and I was shocked by how many guys who were super committed to the union, who were absolutely all about workers' rights, and then on their truck they have an InfoWars bumper sticker. It's like, that's exactly who they're targeting. This disaffected working class who they know that the state is against them, but if we can confuse that narrative, then they won't get involved in more radical politics.
And then they'll put their "Don't Tread on Me" sticker right underneath their Blue Line sticker. Because they don't know who the fuck is fucking treading on them.
Right.
And I'll just give it up to Total Massacre. The system works, just not for us.
Right, yeah, exactly. This is something that, with the reality show of the presidential campaign is entering its next season, this liberal idea of trying to go through the standard mechanisms and the Republicans are the ones who are doing all this awful shit. And it's like, oh, good God, like the system is working very effectively.
Very effective.
And for that, at that rate too, the Democrats are doing their job as the equivalent of the Washington Generals to the Harlem Globetrotters. They're there to lose. They're there to be the good cop.
What a fantastic analogy. They really are. And they're getting clowned on by the biggest clown show in the nation. I mean, the Globetrotters Generals is so perfect because, I mean, forgive me, Globetrotters and Curly and everybody and Meadowlark. I don't mean to compare you to fascists and the alt-right. I really don't. But that you were the Globetrotters was this big kind of ridiculous show. And it was flashy and it was over the top. And that's what you get from these fascists with their MAGA bullshit and they're flying their Trump flags and all their LARPing nonsense. So then the liberals step in and go, oh, well, we're going to just, no, it's not there's nothing to see here. We can work with them. We can make this happen. We can play the game. And then they just get stomped on.
Exactly.
Stomped on. And what that means is you get fucking stomped on because you're a fellow worker, because you're the fucking working class and you're the working poor. And it's you that gets shit on.
We can't win on their terms. It's still this holdover of this culture war bullshit, and it operates at a very thin level. And it's only anarchists and communists and radicals of this stripe who have a material analysis of what's actually going on. It's not this, cultural, aesthetic bullshit. It's people can't fucking pay their rent. People can't afford to eat. People are getting locked up in prisons. They're being killed. It's not a T-shirt. It's not a hash.
So we've talked a lot about sort of domestic issues. You and your comrades organize for international relations and foreign policy issues as well. So let's maybe get into a little bit of hands-off actions that you might be.
Hands off everywhere. U.S. out of everywhere, right? Because I think just as prisoners who are in state facilities advocating for prisoners at federal facilities, just as us on the outside advocating for people on the inside, we have to think of ourselves as all of the same class. And that's true regardless of borders as well. The slogan we keep using is, there are no walls in the workers' struggle. Whether it's a border wall or a prison wall or an apartheid wall in Palestine, the enemy is the same in all these places. It's white supremacists and capitalists. So when there is an attack on Philadelphia, when there's an attack on Reno, when there's an attack anywhere on workers, that's also an attack when it happens in Venezuela, in Iran, in Palestine, in Nicaragua. So we have to show up for them. Especially, I feel like it's incumbent on us in the belly of the beast, right next to the seat of imperial power. We want to get to a place one day where whoever the president is says, all right, we're going to invade Iran. And we say to Iranians, don't worry, we got this. We will make sure that they don't. We will burn down the fucking Pentagon if we have to. We're not there yet, but we can still go out in our communities and show how much we will oppose this stuff. If that means shutting down traffic, if that means fucking people's shit up when they're trying to, not fucking people up, but fucking people up, their commutes and all this stuff. We will shut down the mechanisms of commerce to say, do not start this war.
Yeah, and I want to just to kind of, I want to give a quick shout out to the WOBs, because what's ringing in my head is an injury to one is an injury to all. So an injury to one is an injury to all.
Absolutely.
And I really, really want to sort of echo the notion that, and clarify maybe a little bit that, look, solidarity with the people of Iran is not a validation of what people will see as maybe a repressive regime in Iran and a theocracy in Iran. It's not in solidarity with that. And it's that, you know, I would hope some people would realize, I'm not going to describe them, but I have some anecdotal examples of how this border crisis has made people realize levels of racism that they didn't understand in themselves that was racism. So,
yes.
So in short, just the very notion that because they're from there, they're somehow different than us.
Right.
That's racism. Okay, and
yeah.
you can couch it all in this, but their culture and their government system and their religion over there is so different, so they're different than us, and that's what I mean. No, it isn't, because there are more commonalities within all the world's religions than there are differences. There are more commonalities in all of the world's power mechanisms than there are differences. We focus on those differences. We hyper-focus on those differences.
Right. Exploit the differences when we can.
Which is traditionally and historically a fascist thing to do, which is to scapegoat certain elements that are easier targets. Usually the most marginalized and least powerful people, so they can't defend themselves from these onslaughts. But that is the ultimate worker struggle, comrade, is really, I think, trying to get people to understand that the people of Iran, the people of Saudi Arabia, the people of Yemen, they're us. They're you.
Yes. Yes.
And they're being oppressed by the exact same fucking mechanisms that you're just starting to feel the oppression from, maybe in the privilege that you've experienced by living in this belly of the beast, and maybe having lighter complexions like my comrade and I here. I am part Latinx, but I have blue eyes and light complexion, so I get maybe not all the white privilege, but I get to appreciate some of it for sure. And so it's just so hard for us here to relate to, yes, these are actual people just like you with the same type of goals and aspirations for their families and for their loved ones, and to be left alone by the powers that be, to find love and to express art and to teach their children the way they should go. And so I really went off on a rant there, but I really would like to hear about, because you know, you're a member of an actual revolutionary party, and your party does work in terms of hands off everywhere. So I want to give you the opportunity to talk about
respect. But to your exact point that you just made, it is proof of how far the rot has spread, and how, especially growing up in this society, and especially growing up white and cisgendered, and you know, all these levels of privilege that intersect in similar ways. How far the rot is in our understanding, that when we hear about a drone strike, an airstrike, an assassination in Yemen, if that doesn't fill you with righteous indignation and outrage and sorrow as much as it would if it were your neighbor, that is proof of how much this system tries to pervert our understanding and divide us into these small little sectors where we can't fight in solidarity with each other. But I'm a member of Workers' World Party. We were described in a leaked FBI document as one of the most militant anti-American organization in the country.
Excellent.
And we don't dispute that definition. That's right on.
Put it on a poster and print it,
anti-racist and anti-imperialist.
Right.
And so, you know, when we say we recently had an action at City Hall in Philadelphia that was a joint hands off Iran, no war on Iran, and no war on migrants rally. And, you know, when you're just talking to people on the street, they get it immediately. The masses always understand this when it's provided with context and history. It's just, you won't get that if you're looking at the New York Times or MSNBC.
So, we're talking about like the manipulation of the state and how the system works, just not for us, and how it divides us. It also manipulates people into and weaponizes them weaponizes their ignorance and turns them into dangerous fucking right-wing terrorists.
That's right.
And
it can happen in multiple different ways too. Like, even there was a case in Philly where 2 young black men were arrested because they were waiting for their friend at a Starbucks. Well, the person that called the police on them was a cashier at the Starbucks. Like, you're a member of our class, but you've been so confused that you don't see your fellow human beings. You see them as an enemy. That's, we still have a lot of people to reach.
That's right. And what it was trying to segue into is this fucking Proud Boy nonsense that's been going down in Philly. I mean, I'm sure everybody saw what transpired in Portland this weekend with this fascist propagandist NGO No. He took a bunch of vegan milkshakes and got punched once. And was posting about how his brain was bleeding.
It's horseshit.
It's such horseshit. And,
do you remember the Proud Boy, the attempted Proud Boy rally that happened last November in Philly, and people came out in the thousands to shut them down successfully?
Yes.
They tried one of those fake attacks at Philly, and it didn't get traction, where there was basically a staged attack. And, I don't know what happened with that, Andy, guy.
Right.
But I know that this is one of their tactics.
Well, I mean, Lauren Southern is probably the greatest example of it, where she just goes out, whether it's her cameraman or someone, they're bumping up against you and getting all up in your shit. And then the second you hey, get the fuck off me, it's a week straight of how the violent left and the Antifa,
Exactly.
Look, here's the literal proof. And I mean, that's just basically her MO. And this Andy No guy, that's his MO too, but I mean, it's the right wing 2019 going on 2020 manifestation of right wing fascism. That's what this is. That's what these Proud Boys are. They are contemporary brown shirts. They're not going to be exactly like the brown shirts because our material societal conditions are different in 2019 than they were in the 30s. There's an alarming number of similarities.
Yeah.
But because they don't fit the molds perfectly, it's like, nah, what are you, you're out of your head. We're not the brown shirts. You're the real fascists. But these fuckers are going to people's houses and shit. I mean, I had heard, it was probably about a year ago, of an example of this where the Proud Boys had done this once. I can't remember exactly where it was. But it was really just one example. They had gone to, another member of their class's home, not necessarily a politician or something like that. It was going to just, an anti-fascist house, man. But they've ramped this up, it sounds like, in Philly, to some really scary levels, right?
Yes, it's much more organized in a way that there was, and again, we've been using the word for over a century now, provocateur. They try and start these fights in rallies, and now they're resorting to this other standard fascist tactic where they're showing up at people's houses. I mean, that's Klan shit. That's brown shirt shit. They might be wearing the yellow polo shirts now, but it's the same tactic. We have to be vigilant about seeing what it looks like, as always, in its modern manifestations. But there was an attack on a great anti-fascist activist in Philadelphia, Gwen Snyder. They showed up to her house with guns. They flew people in from out of state to participate in this intimidation, violent provocation.
Terrorism.
It's absolute terrorism. With all the caveats of always never, we don't talk to the police ever, but in certain circumstances, one might be compelled to at least file a paper trail. And Gwen was told by the police that, they were probably just trying to make you nervous.
That's the point of terrorism, which is the literal point of terrorism.
Exactly. Exactly.
You can call it nervous, but it's to make you terrified and scared.
Precisely. They were correct in that. As of now, there's been no action, though we know who these people are. We know their names. We know where they work. And one great act was PhillyProudBoys.com is actually a domain owned by anti-fascist activists in the city. You can go and see their names, and we can dox them, and we're pressuring employers to fire these fuckers, lest they want to be known as the people that hire violent white supremacists. Remember, too, like, Gwen wasn't home at the time, thank God, and she's now not, where they can find her. But her neighbors were the ones that contacted her and said, these guys were looking for you. There are kids in the house, It's really, really a new level of these Proud Boys proving that they're ready to rock and roll.
And I want to point out very clearly that it is community self-defense and organizing amongst yourselves that has defeated them in the past. When we first started this channel and really kind of took off is when the alt-right left the computer and went to the street, and they started they wanted to they really went at Berkeley and Portland hard right in the beginning. And the police had their back. They still act like, I still hear them talking about with the help, these violent Antifa with the help of police, and it's like, those police shot rubber bullets at us, okay? So that were helping us. They were defending you every step of the way. But you know what? Fucking real leftists and real righteous fucking comrades came out in the hundreds, if not thousands, and that's why they're not organizing these fucking rallies every weekend. It's not because some fucking politician stepped down and did something to stop their rallies. The cops have had their back and have faced off against anti-fascists every single fucking time. But, and so much respect and love to all those comrades that put themselves right on that front line, because that's why they're not organizing every weekend. That's why they're getting desperate in this way, where they're actually going to people's houses. This is where you're going to see, this is where like Atomwaffen is something that's getting attention, because it's clear we can't get out in the fucking streets in mass. I mean, Joey Gibson is so off the rails that he's still trying to do things, even though it's a disaster every time he comes out to Portland for him. But if you can't, you're seeing more of them going to like school board meetings, especially in Orange County. The fascists are really obsessed with these school board meetings because they can get the videos and shit. And that's what this is all about. They don't have a political ideology. They live stream this shit. They make money when they go out and live stream it because people fucking donate to those live stream fucking live chats and shit.
Yeah.
And hit up their Patreon.
And when they do these provocations too, they can raise money. Like that Andy Neal guy got like $60,000 or some ridiculous shit,
Yo, he had a new Patreon already set up for the purpose of, look at me, I was victimized at the Portland fascist rally. He premeditated his victimhood.
Exactly.
And it's not for a political ideology. Again, let me just say real quick, and I promise I'll let you go. It's not. They have some talking points that they spew, free speech and patriotism and these vague fucking things that ultimately do bolster and support the status quo. But it's their lives have no relevance.
Precisely.
And this gives them relevance. And we're stealing that relevance from them, but that means that they're going to ramp up and do more dangerous things like what you're seeing. So I'll let you go.
It's in a way, it's proof that they've moved on to different tactics because we have so effectively shut them out of public squares. And again, try and imagine what these things would look like if they didn't have the police to defend them. The police are on their side. They know it. We know it. The police certainly fucking know it. And I think we're entering into another phase, and we have to be hyper vigilant. Not to get too alarmist about it, but it's another every time they mobilize, we need to be 2 steps ahead of them.
And I would just say to echo that is that, like, I'll be a little alarmist. Like, we haven't won. We haven't fucking won. But I do want all our comrades out there, especially all those comrades up in Portland and in the Northwest and down in Orange County that have been fighting really hard for against this for the last few years. It's been effective, and but we're going to have to continue up. I've been saying for a while now, get ready, because in this 2020 election, it's different, because it's the first time we actually have a literal fascist in power who's going to be campaigning on defending the right of a fascist to stay in power in the United States. So that's going to massively affect the propaganda that we're bombarded with. And
Absolutely.
The fear-mongering and the weaponized language, the language that weaponizes these alt-right people to take action, is going to be significantly ramped up again. And so be vigilant. We got your back here. We'll do what we can to try to get the proper word out, because your bourgeois media, whether it's liberal or far-right fascist, is not going to give you the straight reality on it. And
yeah, I mean, good luck even finding this new provocation in Philadelphia in mainstream outlets. It's shocking what doesn't get reported on, and a lot of it is happening more and more. It is scary, and they're emboldened because they know that they have a fascist president who will have their back, who campaigned on the fact that he wanted them to commit violence and he would defend them.
That's right.
He's a sledgehammer that's meant to smash up the working class, and they fragmented off, unfortunately, and became traitors to their own class.
No, and the state's going to let them get away with it because it ultimately helps them. I mean, I don't think that the mechanisms of power have any, like, respect or, like, real appreciation for these idiot patriot people. Right. I mean, they actually have disdain for you. If you're watching and you're an alt-righter, Trump fucking hates you. He has zero respect for you and will shit on you the first fucking... But, I mean, basically, when you go out and you send a bunch of pipe bombs to people, or you, like, murder a couple of your Atomwaffen buddies, well, then the cops are gonna then arrest you. Then they're like, God damn it, you fucking moron. You know, like, don't shoot up the federal building, because now I gotta fucking arrest your ass. But go beat up some Antifas and go to their house and scare them, and that's cool. You know, we're alone out here, fellow workers. We're alone out here.
Who arrested James Field? They didn't want to put him away.
Fuck no, they didn't.
They're like, force my hand. You know, it's like, I'm thinking about that Bob Dylan song, "Only a Pawn in Their Game." Where he's like, they're attack dogs. They're dogs on a chain. They don't have a name. The ruling class uses them as a pawn, and they have a great deal of disdain for them. You know, if they were to become radicalized and join their class, they would find community and solidarity and love. They're not going to get it from their owners.
They're not. And the second, like, if you go and you look at their chats and whatever, it's just next level echo chamber. Like, you are not, there is no dissension or like, well, I'm not sure, like, maybe if we went, no. I mean, you're instantly race traitor, N-word lover or something, because you slightly, thought, well, it has to be, you're 100%, if you're 100% on board, you got great comrades that love you.
Right.
That's not camaraderie. That's not camaraderie. That's not love. That's not solidarity. It's not respect. That's right.
And like you said earlier, it's nihilism. It's a death cult. It's why so many of these white supremacist mass shooters kill themselves at the end. Yeah. It's very bleak. It's a sad worldview. You know, I pity them in a way, because they, rather than build something for the future, they would rather, commit some heinous act so that they get on the news for half a news cycle. It's sad.
So let's take I want to start to work on wrapping this up a little bit, but we have not talked about F.I.R.E. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what FIRE is and the type of work that FIRE does.
Yeah. FIRE, again, it stands for Fight for Immigrants and Refugees Everywhere. This is an organization that was formed around since the Trump administration has taken power, that was dedicated specifically to building a broad base of support to fight back against the mass incarceration and mass slaughter of migrants, who, again, as all things intersect, the people who came in the migrant caravan were coming from El Salvador and Guatemala and Honduras, all countries that the U.S. government destroyed. That's why they're fleeing their homes. That's why they're risking their lives and trying to, they're forced into this horrible gamble of maybe we will be separated from our kids, but at least they won't be killed by a death squad in Honduras. Shout out to the people of Honduras, by the way, fighting back.
Right.
So FIRE was formed as a broad base of solidarity action with migrants and asylum seekers and refugees from all of these places, whether it's from Haiti or Central Africa or the Middle East or Central America. And one of the things that FIRE has been doing around the country is going on these solidarity brigades to Mexico, across the border, where there are also concentration camps in very dire conditions. Just because you don't make it across the border doesn't mean you're, gold. Bringing what supplies we can. Unfortunately, with the increasing crackdown, bringing supplies is less and less possible. I mean, we see it happening in the U.S. all the time with people trying to at least bring water or toothpaste to these facilities. After it came out that these children hadn't been given showers, people were trying to show up to these detention centers, these concentration camps with supplies and being turned away. So that means that we need to step up our organizing as well. I think there's been some great actions, literally shutting down entrances to concentration camps, and all manner of direct action that, if you go onto FIRE's website, if you check out the Facebook page, there's a Twitter to Fight for #4 Migrants. You can find out about where these solidarity actions are happening, because like prisons, you would be shocked at how close these ICE facilities are to where you live. I mean, Philadelphia, which is nowhere near the the so-called U.S.-Mexico border, are the ICE headquarters that operates out of Philadelphia is the most active and notorious in the country. I mean, who would have thought? But it's a hub for this kind of police activity. So yeah, I recommend people check out FIRE. There's stuff happening all over the country, but particularly in the Southwest and in Texas.
Excellent. So let's run down some links again.
Cool. Yeah.
There was the Mumia page. What was it? For Mumia?
Yes. So on Facebook, it's Mobilization for Mumia. You can also go to mobilizationformumia.org. I also recommend people check out FIRE, Fight for Migrants, and it's fighting for immigrants and refugees everywhere. Follow the hashtag #HandsOffVenezuela for some of the great work. At some point in the future, we'll have to talk about that great occupation of the Venezuelan embassy in D.C. And if folks want to follow the developments in Pennsylvania prisons, if you go to workers.org, they just put my most recent dispatch up on the site yesterday.
It's just workers.org?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you're, I'm an anarchist, but if you're a communist and you're looking to, if you're interested in getting more active and actual organizing and working with a real party, Workers' World Party might be something you'd be interested in looking into. So, workersworldparty.org can look into that.
Solidarity.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anti-fascism is, working in solidarity with your fellow anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist comrades. And,
that's right.
Damn, Ted. I really appreciate you hanging out with me, comrade, and bringing all this fantastic, awful information.
This is an even bleaker one than the last one.
I know. But the work being done in response to it is really, really encouraging. And I know that you're just, you and your comrades are just constantly on the go. And I, for one, appreciate the efforts that you do. I really appreciate getting to hear about it and to share it with our followers. Please check all those links. And what was the Proud Boy website run by Anti-Fascists?
It's phillyproudboys.com. It feels gross to type it in, but I promise you, the site is Docs Your Local Proud Boy.
Fantastic.
And yeah, it's always such a pleasure talking to you. And Punks for Progress is such a great show, and there's always different voices that you can hear, and it's really one of the only things on YouTube that has not fallen into that vicious fascist cycle. Like, holding this down on YouTube is really powerful, I gotta say.
Well, there's a bunch of other great leftists on YouTube, without question. If you go to our Facebook page, I just recently posted a list of 20 different leftist YouTube channels that you should sub to. And I'm not going to rattle them off now, but please go look at that. Let's do this again, sooner rather than later. This is something that we're going to work out just for your information. We want to do this regularly. I think we're talking about probably twice a month for right now to, find the time to make it work. But ultimately, this will just be a regular thing, the Philly Report with Ted Kelly. And that's what this has been, comrade.
How about it? I love it. I hope your viewers aren't too bummed out by the Philadelphia Report.
Yeah, fuck them if they are. God damn it. Well, solidarity with you, comrade. I appreciate all the work you do. Please like and sub and whatever, and go look at all those links, and work on your milkshakes, and yeah, this has been badass. Thanks, guys.
Always a pleasure. Solidarity, comrade.
Not one single official involved in the planning or murder of my family has ever been charged with anything, imprisoned for anything, held accountable in any way. The only person to go to prison as a result of the events of May 13th, 1985 is me. I spent 7 years in prison.
The way that the story was told by the mainstream media, the story of those activists, of their work. Today, I believe with camera phones, people are able to move that content directly to the public and give the public the ability to have a conversation. Black folks are the base of the Democratic Party and have consistently been the drivers for any success the Democratic Party had. The moment we are in around police brutality and police misconduct and the work to create a more accountable system and structure, candidates are accountable to our community before and after the vote.
There is hope. Seeing young people today stepping up, refusing to accept being murdered in the street by cops, it's long overdue.